gastrointestinal physiology. Let's look at some of the structures of the GI tract, which is the gastrointestinal tract. Upon leaving the oral cavity, we have the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, which we see here in green, blue, and red, which represent the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum respectively, which brings us into the large intestine right here, and then eventually down to the rectum and the anus. There's also some accessory organs in this image, such as the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. The four main functions of the gastrointestinal tract or digestive system are digestion, motility, absorption, and secretion. So what we see on the left side of the image is just a basic view of the GI tract. This could be anywhere from the esophagus all the way through the rectum, though it's going to be varied depending on what region we're talking about. But in pink here, we have epithelial cells lining the tube of the GI tract. This is the lumen right here. These are goblet cells, which are going to secrete mucus that line the GI tract, offer moisture for the chyme passing through the GI tract. The chyme is the digestive food, which is in the gut and the lower intestines. Above that, that is to say, in the esophagus, we call it the bolus of food. So the mucus helps lubricate that food and allow it to slip along its journey. But mucus also protects the very fragile epithelial cells that we see lining each side of this gastrointestinal tube or tract, because in some regions it can be very acidic, and that is intentional, but that high acidity or low pH can actually damage these epithelial cells. So the mucus helps protect the epithelium of the GI tract. Oftentimes we also see microvilli. Microvilli increase surface area of cells on the apical surface of the cells to allow more activity in and out of cells. So motility is movement of the bolus or the chyme through the GI tract. And motility serves two purposes. One, it breaks down the food or the bolus to increase the surface area for digestive enzymes to gain access to different molecules and substrates within that food. Motility also helps push the products from point A to point B through the gastrointestinal system. Absorption is a huge role of the digestive system. Now, when we talked about the urinary system, we talked about reabsorption. And the reason in the urinary system we talk about reabsorption is because the initial absorption occurs in the GI tract, mainly in the small intestines and to a lesser degree in the large intestine. But absorption is the movement of digestive products from the lumen of the GI tract into the bloodstream. So to be clear, this space right here is the interstitial space or interstitial fluid. This right here is the bloodstream or the blood plasma. Extracellular fluid, for review, is made up of interstitial fluid that we see here and the blood plasma, certainly among other fluids in the body. So absorption takes products from the lumen of the GI tract into the bloodstream. Secretion is the movement of products from these epithelial cells either into the lumen, such as the secretion of enzymes, ions, hydrogen ions, signaling molecules into the lumen. Or it could be the secretion of molecules from these epithelial cells into the extracellular fluid. So secretion can move both ways. Absorption is always from the lumen to the bloodstream. Now I want to talk about peristalsis, which are wave-like contractions along the GI tract to help propel the bolus or chyme upon its journey. And what happens is we can see in this image right here, there's a contraction of the tube or the digestive tract that pushes that bolus of food downstream. And we can also see it in this image right here. contraction pushing this bolus downstream. It would be contracted again to push it further downstream. So the GI tract is lined with epithelial tissue, it's lined with connective tissue, but there is also smooth muscle along the entire GI tract to aid in peristalsis, the rhythmic contractions of smooth muscle which propels the bolus or chyme along its journey. And playing a huge role in that are these interstitial cells of Cajal, otherwise known as Icc cells. Icc cells are very similar to myocardial autorhythmic cells because these Icc cells of the GI tract depolarize and repolarize spontaneously, and the goal of that is to transfer that depolarization event to the smooth muscle of the GI tract to allow for peristalsis, where that smooth muscle contracts and relaxes. Just like in the heart, the myocardial autorhythmic cells are going to depolarize and repolarize much more at a much higher rate. If we recall, with MACs, it's somewhere from 60 to 100. With ICCs, it's more in the range of 3 to 12 depolarization events per minute. Now, they're not doing it exclusively on their own. They are aided by neurons. So oftentimes, ICCs are described as being the interface or connection between the nervous system and the muscles of the GI tract. When one eats, that initiates stimulus of nerve fibers going to these Icc cells, activating them and initiating contraction and relaxation of smooth muscle, which creates the rhythmic-like contractions needed for peristalsis.